We're going to start from paragraph base, number base. We left off in the middle, the whole concept, why God created existence. Just to review just a little bit. God himself, because he is good, wants to do good. God has no needs, because God is perfect in the absolute sense. Perfect means that there's no deficiency. Nothing can complete him. And God himself is self-contained. He's not dependent on anyone other than himself. He's not totally bizuloso. He's not dependent on anything outside of himself. God being infinite means there's nothing outside of him. And he's perfect in the absolute sense. And he's good in the absolute sense. God wanting man to be the greatest beneficiary of that good, he wants man to assume within his own capacity a similar profile as himself, to reflect his profile, that he should be the basis for his deservingness of the goodness. Rather than just endow him with goodness, God could have created the soul and put the soul in the soul world, or in Olam Haba, what we call the world to come, that it should just bask in God's glory. But then the person himself is not the basis for that goodness. But if the person is endowed with choice, and due to his choice, he's deserving of that goodness, so why is he deserving? Not because it's attributed to anything or anyone other than himself. Just as God, his goodness, is attributed only to himself, not to anybody but himself. So the deservingness of the good, of the reward which the person ultimately will be the beneficiary of, is similar. It's based on the expression of God's characteristic of being self-sufficient. And as a result of this, he will be the ultimate beneficiary of the goodness. This is what the RaMCHaL had said last week. Al-Kain Goza V'Sider, next to the bottom paragraph. Therefore he decreed and he ordered. Sheiboru Inyonei Shleimus V'Inyonei Chosorum. There should be aspects of completion and deficiency. The deficiencies. If there's a deficiency, you could complete the deficiency. You could bring about deficiency, which is void and vacuum, or you could actually fill in the deficiency, complete the deficiency. And this is literally almost the words of the Rambam. The Rambam says that anybody who says that man is destined to be evil or destined to be devoutly righteous, he's a fool. There's no such thing. Man was created and placed in the point where he has the choice to be tzaddik or rasha. This is really, it's paraphrasing the words of the Gemara. Everything's predestined except one's spiritual predicament of righteous or evil, tzaddik or rasha. So he created a creature who has relevance to both sides of the equation. Whatever direction he chooses to go, he has that ability to go in that direction. It's very interesting. In the words of the Gemara says, whatever path a person chooses to follow, God will even assist him to take that path. A person wants to steal. A person has the ability to plan the crime. He has to have a certain mental capacity. Who wills that capacity? God. Gives him the confidence to be able to carry out the crime. Who gives him that confidence? God. But it's contrary to God's will. If that's the path you want to choose, God will give you whatever you need to be able to do things and to behave and to transgress to contrary to his will. Because if you don't have that other side of the equation, the balance, that means you're more inclined to good than to evil. You have to be in a position to do either, whatever you choose to do. So therefore you have to provide the negative to give value to the positive. Even by doing the negative, you're going against your Creator. And you're almost forcing Him to assist you in the wrong, which is contrary to His will. God has provided for this creature mediums, that through those mediums he should be able to acquire for himself shleimus, wholesomeness, and to remove from himself all that's deficient. Then he will be classified that is a semblance of what has relevance to his Creator. And he will be worthy and qualified to attach himself to him, to be able to benefit from his goodness. Because he's taken on the basis for the being deserving of this reward. It's something he created because he could have gone the other direction. And he chose, but what caused him to choose? That was his own volition. He wasn't compelled, he wasn't coerced, he wasn't forced. As God is not compelled, coerced, or forced. That is God's characteristic. V'omnam, however, milvad heyosabri azo shekonsa shleimus ru'uyo lidovik b'boris baruch shmo. Besides this creature, which has acquired the wholesomeness, that it is worthy to attach itself to its Creator, because it assumed a semblance of comparison to his Creator. What does it bring about? It allows the person to attach, continually attach itself. What's the attachment? Person is the essence of goodness, and that person does you one of a kind of favor. So you're a recipient of that favor to goodness. But are you part of that goodness? You receive something good. But what is the ultimate? When you assume that you're worthy of the goodness, it's more than you receiving goodness. By attaching yourself, you become part of that goodness. And the equivalent is, as we discussed at one time, it's like grafting a branch onto a tree. Once the graft takes, and especially if the graft is done properly, ultimately that branch will be part of the ecosystem of the tree. And the fruit that's produced by the tree naturally will be grown on that branch. So it's more than you're just a recipient of goodness. You become part of that goodness. Through the attachment and assuming God's profile and assuming the semblance of the goodness of God, ultimately he acquires this wholesomeness. Acquiring shleimus and attaching yourself to him, it's all one and the same. So what is shleimus? What is completion? What is wholesomeness? In the absolute sense, only one thing, God. We explained last week, that let's say something qualitatively is 99%. It's not 100%. It's a different quality. Different quality. It's 99, not 100%. What about you graft something onto a tree, and 50% of the branch takes, the other 50% doesn't. But whatever part of the branch takes and is grafted, it's attached 100% to that part, to the ecosystem of the tree, even though they have not. Moshe Rabbeinu was the ultimate. There was no one as great as Moshe Rabbeinu. Negated, there wasn't a trace of self. So his attachment was full. let's say any other Jew who merits a share in the world to come. Let's say his attachment is infinitesimal, a level of attachment, microscopic attachment. But even though he's mostly detached, but whatever is attached, what is it attached to? It's attached to the real thing, to something which is ultimately, in the absolute sense, whole, which is in absolute sense good. That's the difference. Because otherwise say, either you make the ultimate grade or you haven't made it. If that's the case, that's not what he's saying. Whatever level you achieve, at that level, what are you attaching yourself to? To the ultimate. Thinking, the pasuk says that certain people have no share in the world to come. But there's no person who hasn't done a good deed in his life. So God has to reward that person. The pasuk says, "Mishalim l'sonav alponav lavido." God pays his enemies in their lifetime to send them into the oblivion. That after they pass away, account closed. There's nothing. Because it's been fully paid out, the account. Because he's sonov. Mishalim l'sonov alponov. Those who he despises, who he hates, he's mishalim. He pays them. Why? Lahavido. To destroy him. A person in his essence who's evil, a person does a good deed. This is the good deed. So what's the reason why that person is deserving a share in the world to come? Because he's reflecting God's goodness. But if the essence of the person is evil, that's his classification. So what if he did a good deed? And the good deed is attributed. But the reason why the person could attach himself is because he has the profile of God. This man doesn't have God's profile. He rejects the 13 tenets of Jewish faith, which the Rambam puts down, which is a prerequisite to have a share in the world to come. How could you have a relationship with me? How do you reflect who I am? You reject me. Well, but the action I did has a semblance of what you are. But you're a forgery. It resembles, but it's not. Therefore, but I have to pay you. La vido. Because if you can't attach yourself, what's the ultimate end? Once you're paid out, you have no value. God only maintains you as long as you could actually be paid out. After that, it's la vido. The person goes into the oblivion. See, but it doesn't answer the question which the Chaim asks. If we read in Pirkei Avos, schar b'hayal malekov, there's no reward in this world. That a mitzvah is so infinitely valuable. As long as you live, you can't live long enough to be paid out. So it's forever. So how could it be mishal l'sonav alponav lavido? The payout should be forever, right? Because that is the nature of the mitzvah. But yet, a person could be paid out in 70 years, in 100 years. A person should live forever. Because if the schar of the mitzvah, if the innate value of the mitzvah is eternity, so what's the equivalent of eternity in the physical life? So, it's unending in the physical. Right? So the Chaim answers. So even though we understand why he doesn't have a share in the world to come, because minimally you have to assume God's profile. But if you deny everything about God, you can't attach yourself. No, it's like a person, he'll only go in the water if you put on a wetsuit, which is about 70,000 feet thick, because he wants nothing to do with water. Could he have a relationship with water? If the man denies the 13 tenets of Jewish belief, he denies the existence of God, he doesn't believe in whatever he's supposed to believe, How can he have a relationship with God? God, I want to have a relationship, but I reject everything that what you're about, and everything that you've instructed us to believe in and prescribed. There's no basis. There's no basis for a relationship. That's ein lo chel lemabo, but you have to be paid. So I was thinking, maybe. So the Chaim answers with an allegory, but it addresses one point only in a limited context. And I've said it in the past. This person, this is the time of the Tsar, he goes and he forges documents which are the equivalent of $1 million Russian rubles. About $100 million worth of rubles. And you can't cash it in the bank. And each one is like 25,000 ruble documents. So he goes to the Minister of Treasury in Petrograd, and he goes to cash it in. The Minister of the Treasury, who's an expert in counterfeit, he looks at it, and he says, "You deserve to be put before firing squad." He said, "What are you talking about? I just gave you millions of dollars worth of rubles. You mean you're not going to give me its value?" He says, "No." He says, "Why? Tell me, what's wrong with it?" He says, "I'll tell you what's wrong with it. If you take the paper and hold it up to the light, if it would be an authentic ruble, you'd have the watermark of the Tsar. This ruble doesn't have the watermark. So even though the printing is perfect, but it's clear it's a counterfeit. It's not worth the paper it's printed on. You want to be smart? Take the few kopecks I give you and disappear. Otherwise, you're going to be put to death." A person who's a heretic, why does he do it? What infuses a mitzvah with its infinite value? Because you're doing it because God dictated you should do it. But if it's not infused with that belief and with all the various prerequisites to give it that qualitative value, it's like a piece of paper. It has limited value. Therefore, God could pay Sonav Aponav Lavido, the Sonav. So he gave milk to the cat. And he stayed on whatever it is. He marched in the parade for the homeless. And he opened methadone clinics for who knows where. And he marched in Selma, Alabama. He watched, therefore what? And he showed whatever it is. And he ate grits with the homeless in some field. And he was bitten by the Zika mosquito, together with the unfortunates. He showed tremendous degree of compassion and mercy. But what's it worth? It's not worth much more than the mosquito, the diseased mosquito. So what is he going to get? He'll get a pound of grits. That's what he's getting, nothing more than that. Okay? That's the Chofetz Chaim. But if a person has the watermark of the king, he does it l'shem shamayim. I do it as an Eved Hashem, as God's servant, and it has that embossment and that watermark. This has infinite value. You could live 1,000 years, you can't be paid out. That's char bayal meleka. So that's very good if we speak about a person who initially, from the very beginning, when he did the act of kindness, the good deed, he already was classified as a heretic. What about a person who was a Shano Pirish? He was an observant Jew. When he did the mitzvah initially, he did it with a proper intent. And then afterwards, he went south. He chose to become a heretic. So the mitzvah initially, when he did it, was infused. And this man wants the cake and eat it. He says, I want what's rightfully mine. Although today I don't believe in God, and I don't believe in the authenticity of Torah, I don't believe in reward and punishment, or I don't believe in resurrection, I don't believe in Mashiach. That's what the man says. And every one of these denials and rejections cause him to be classified as a heretic. So why doesn't he have a share in the world to come? Initially, his mitzvah has the watermark, because initially he infused it with that intent. So the Chofetz Chaim's allegory doesn't fit that case. We should say he should have Mishal Mapon of Lavido. That person should receive a share in the world to come. So Rabbi Yisrael Salanta says that rejecting the Yud Gimel Ikre Emunah, what are you saying? I have no interest. What happens if the person wants a piece of property so badly, or a diamond, and he has unlimited money, and he can outbid anybody, and he overpays endless times because he has the means? What happens? They'll give it to him, even though he's willing to pay an insane number. But at the end of the day, when you pay that kind of number, ultimately the person depletes all his resources. He has no resources left. This man is willing to exchange the world to come for the material world. God says it's not really in your best interest to do this, but if that's what you choose to do, account closed. There's nothing left. So as a result of that, it's Mishalom Ponu L'Son Lavido, because that's the person's choice. I have no interest in you, God. You have no interest, so whatever you have here, that's the payoff. I mean, to bring it to another level, I'll explain it to you. We say nobody's perfect. What's Nosei Ovam V'Feshach? God carries the sin, whether it's inadvertent, deliberate, or defiant. So the RaMCHaL explains in Tomer Dvorah that everything in existence exists because God sustains it. He sustains it. If a person is evil, why should God sustain him? Let the person be consumed by the evil that he created. Because God wants to give them a chance. They should be able to do tshuva. They should be able to repent. So God therefore sustains him. God's ability to sustain, where does it emanate from? From him being the infinite being. That's where it emanates from. This person who rejected the Yud Gimel Ikre Emunah, you know what sustains him? God says, I'm not sustaining you. The value of the little good that you did, that will sustain you. That's the payoff. Otherwise, I'm not sustaining you. Otherwise, you should die instantaneously. Because the evil that was created, as the Chaim says, and the RaMCHaL says, as a result of the sin, the impurity that it created, it's worse than lethal. So why are you living? Why do you continue? Why do you continue to thrive? Because God has agreed, we're going to have an exchange here. The exchange is not the steak. The exchange is not the mansion. And all the hedonism. The exchange is that you live. Do you want to live or die? Derech says, I want to live. You want to live? Life is invaluable. It's going to cost you. You know what it's going to cost you? It's going to cost you the infinite value of the mitzvah. Because my mercy is infinite. But for you, there is no mercy. So why does he live? The schar, the infinite reward, which you would have gotten elsewhere, you want to live. You underwrite yourself. Underwriting yourself, what happens when it's time to expire? There's nothing left. Therefore, he goes into the oblivion. So it's not... See, the way Rabbi Sol explains it, it's if you want to have pleasure, you're willing to pay endless value for something that's worth a pittance versus what you're paying. I'm saying differently than that. I'm saying nobody's perfect. There's no perfect tzaddik. Shlomo Melech's words. So every one of us has enough debt that the debt should destroy us. There's enough lethal substance worse than cyanide. We shouldn't be able to survive for a moment. So why do we survive? Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu neutralizes it continuously, and that's the midas harachmim. Nosei ovam v'feshchat. He carries the sin. So a person who believes in God, who tries to do the right thing, who's not a Russia, okay? God says, I'm willing to carry it for you. You believe in tshuva, you believe in Torah, you believe in Olam Haba, you believe in Tchias HaMesim, you believe in Mashiach, you believe in authenticity of Torah. Your desire got the best of you, but you believe it. So therefore, I'm willing to have mercy on you, to give you a chance to do tshuva. But if you're out of the picture, you've already rejected the classification, and you're a self-hating Jew and you reject the basic tenets, you know something? I'm not interested in you. Why should I carry your burden? You carry your own burden. To carry your own burden, that you need infinite payment for that. And therefore, that's what depletes his schar, his chus. And when he's ready to leave this world because it's been depleted, it's over. It's la vido. V'hinei, l'shiyu bebetzios inyonim hashonim ha'eleh shel shleimus v'achisaron shel charnu. So we're saying in reality, in existence you could create wholesomeness, perfection, bringing a person could create void, vacuum, deficiency. A person could take himself down, chas v'sholem. That's what you could do. Once mentioned the name of the RaMCHaL, Prague. Lo sase, the connotation of don't do. We have 365 don't do's. Negative commandments. Don't do, the connotation is because it's not your best interest to do that. That's what? That's compromise. You're going to compromise yourself. That's diminishment. That represents diminishment. Do, the do mitzvah, 248 positive commandments. Do is, that's advancement. If you want to be enhanced, if you want to advance yourself, you want to become more perfect, then that's the do mitzvah. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu created in existence, there's the don't do. So don't do, if you don't cross the line, you maintain where you're at. You want to go beyond that, then you do the mitzvah saseh, the positive commandment. But if the person chooses to transgress and cross the line, then there's going to be chesara, and there's going to be diminishment. Okay? We've spoken about the creature who has relevance to both. The human being has relevance to perfection, shleimus, and to deficiency, to diminishment. He's able to acquire, to achieve perfection, and he'll remove himself from deficiency. And God provided mediums to be able to bring this about. I mean, how does a person perfect himself? God says, you're in this world to perfect yourself. Figure it out. How do you figure it out? How do I know how to perfect my neshama? Nobody knows what neshama is. Only God, who's the creator of the soul, does He know what you must do to enhance it and not to diminish it. Liglo zeh hashleimus hine vari sheprotim rabim v'shonim sorech sheyimotzu bevriyo. There are many details and aspects and components that have to exist in existence to be able to bring that about. V'yichusim rabim min haprotim eleh, and there's many relationships between these various things, to bring about the ultimate purpose. It's interesting. I always mention the Gemara in Avodah Zarah, the end of time, when it's time to give reward. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Yoshev Sefer Torah B'cheiko. God is going to sit with the Sefer Torah in his lap, and he's going to announce to the world, Kol bi sheyesh bo yovel ito scharo. Whoever has a share in Torah should come and take his rightful reward. Who's the first one to show up? The Romans. The Romans, they say, we have a stake in Torah. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to the Romans, so what did you contribute to Torah? Well, we built marketplaces, we built boulevards, we waged wars and amassed tremendous amounts of gold and silver. It was all for the sake of the Jews who should study Torah. And bathhouses. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, you're talking to me. The boulevards and the bathhouses were for yourselves with the most negative criticism, Hashem says to them. For self-glorification. What does that have to do with the Jews studying Torah? You did it for yourselves. It has nothing to do with the Jew. They walked out disappointed, like beaten dogs. Who comes in? Who's the next person? The next nation to come in? The Persians. What did you do? We built bridges, water aqueducts. We did all this, so the Jews should be able to study Torah. Same discussion. Shotim atem, you're fools, you did it for yourselves. And every one of the nations walk out depressed, in melancholy, disappointed. So the Brisker Rav asks, we're talking about this is at the end of time. This is the moment of truth. They know they're talking to God. If that is the case, what do you mean that they're blatantly lying to God? They did and they didn't do. So the Brisker Rav says, in the ultimate sense, nothing could happen in this existence unless it's directly or indirectly connected to Torah, to facilitate the study of Torah. Because if it's Bereshis bara Elokim Shamayim v'Aretz, if the world was created for the sake of Torah, and the sake of Bereshis, the chosen, who's Klal Yisrael, that they're the only people who can study Torah, and that's the opening statement in the Torah, Bereshis bara Elokim, for the sake of Torah, for the sake of Klal Yisrael, that means there's no aspect of creation then, or anything that could evolve from that only comes about only because it has relevance to the study of Torah. So even though their intent was not to reduce the study of Torah, but factually, their victory, did it facilitate some degree of study of Torah? The answer is yes. Whatever they did, because it couldn't have happened otherwise. So God says it's true, but that has nothing to do with you. What was your intent? Your intent was whatever it was, as the Gemara tells it. Boulevard, so the harlots could stroll in the boulevards, in the bathhouses for yourselves and your glory. That's why you did it. In the truest sense, of course. So the Jews should be beneficiaries at some level. But you understand, but reward for the study of Torah is only if the intent was for that. Not if the intent was for yourselves, and it's only a byproduct of what you did. So it comes out, he says, there are many details and components which have to exist in the Bria. Has to exist. Why? And the various relationships between these things. Ultimately, where it comes to completion, for the ultimate, for the objective, which is Voy Hashem Melech Kol Oretz, L'chvodi Barosif. So let's understand. So that means, he says, so everything in existence is ultimately for that objective. There's nothing that exists in this existence. Assad, every one of these Rishonim, Hitler Yemach Shemo V'Zichro. So he couldn't exist unless somehow he has relevance to Kavod Shamayim. Kodesh Baruch Hu says, Ki al Keis Ko. My throne is not complete until Mochel Timcha, until you obliterate Amalek from under the heavens. That's when Amalek at the end of time will be destroyed. That's going to be the ultimate Kavod Shamayim. So Amalek, they chose to be Amalek. They chose to attack us. That's what they chose. And that's evil. But the vanquishing of that evil, what is that? That's Kavod Shamayim. So their choice, ultimately, will bring Kavod Shamayim. Even though their choice was the most extreme antithesis of what Kavod Shamayim was. Because they undermined Kavod Shamayim by attacking us. Therefore God says, my throne is not complete until they're obliterated from under the heaven. The RaMCHaL writes later, there is Ra, there's evil in existence. Why did God create an entity of evil? We're saying, what's the other side of the equation? You have to have the balance. Man has to be in a position to do right or wrong. Wrong is evil. That's what it generates. If man did not have that ability, he can't be a beneficiary of the good. Because he has to be in a position to make the choice. So the value of the evil is not to partake of the evil. To make the choice not to do evil. That's its value. The halacha is that tefillin, the leather that you use tefillin, has to be from a kosher species. Even if it wasn't slaughtered, but as long as it's kosher species, it qualifies to tefillin. To the leather of tefillin, it's why was the cow created with a hide? Because you need shoes and belts and leather coats and jackets. Because tefillin have to be made from the hide of a kosher species. That's the reason why. That's one of the reasons why the kosher species has to have a non-kosher species. Its hide cannot be used. It has to be mutar b'ficha. It has to be permitted for you to eat of that species. Everything connects to Torah. There are many things we don't know, but everything at some level has relevance to what? To the Torah. This creature, which is destined for this great ultimate opportunity or purpose. Ultimately, after 120 years, you merit to go before Bezdin Shamalo and to ascend. This creature, who is the center of the universe? What is a human being in terms of creation? In terms of what was created, what is the center? What is the most important creation of existence? The human being. Because this is the whole. Everything was created to create the setting for this human being to make choices. He is the ikoris. He's the primary. He is the primary creation, the human being. Physically, we can't stand up against other physical creatures. Strength-wise, speed-wise, condition-wise. The human being is the most frail, vulnerable being in terms of his physicality. Child is born, child doesn't naturally develop, has to be nurtured by a parent, by a mother. Leave it, expose it to the elements, you don't feed it, whatever, the child dies. So in its physical makeup, it's the most needy, the most fragile, the most vulnerable. But in terms of its innate value, because of its neshama, and it was endowed, that's why it's endowed with intelligence. Intelligence is to be able to make the evaluations, to do the analysis, to have recall and have frames of reference, to understand what is acceptable, what has to be rejected. This is the brio ikoris. He ikoris shebachla brio. Choshar mashi motze b'mitzius. Where anything else outside the human being that you find in existence, lo yeh elo ozer be'ezetzar o be'ezeh bechino. It's only purely to be an assistance. That's all it is. So why does the dog exist? It's man's best friend, right? That's why. You know why the dog exists? The dog brought about a Kiddush Hashem. Kodesh Baruch said, "Lo yechatz keled v'shoro," when by the 10th plague, right? They said the dog will not bark, and it didn't bark. It's a Kiddush Hashem. The dog brought about a Kiddush Hashem. The dog naturally barks. By nevelo, so you give it to the dog. So anything that exists is to assist in the success, to facilitate the success of this creature. Therefore, everything in existence is considered secondary to this creature, to the human being. It's a famous Sefarno. Before the Mabul, before the Great Flood, man was not permitted to kill for meat. After the Great Flood, meat was permitted. That the animal was like Isav HaSoda. Now it's like the grass, like the vegetation. As the vegetation was permitted before, now the animal's permitted. To kill, to eat, why not before, why only after? So the Ramban explains that before, God says, why should you kill the creature? Even though you're the primary, it's not something that you need. Its existence doesn't exist because you exist. It exists because God willed it should exist. But because Noach was Motza Chaim B'nei Hashem, he found charm in God's eyes. That's why existence continued. So why does every living creature exist? Because Noach. That means the animal exists because of Noach. The insect, the fish, the bird, because of Noach. So because everything, their existence is attributed to his worthiness and his merit, that's what God says, you have a right to kill them for your purpose. You can't be wasteful. But in terms to accommodate your need, your desire to eat meat, the hide, you're permitted to kill them. There's the Sephardi says something interesting. We find that if you consecrate something and you slaughter it outside of Beis Hamikdash, it's called Shchutei Chutz. You've slaughtered something outside of its parameters. You're only permitted to slaughter a korban, a sacrifice, something that's consecrated only within the confines of the sanctuary. Slaughter outside carries the liability of spiritual excision koris. If a person benefits from something that's consecrated, it's called me'ilah. You benefit from somebody, something that's consecrated. The Gemara explains that David Melech says, L'Hashem Haaretz U'Mloah. The world's entirety belongs to God. But yet David also says, Hashemayim Shemayim L'Hashem, Ba'aretz Nasan Levnei Odom. The heaven, the celestial part of existence is God's, the terrestrial is man's. It's contradictory here. L'Hashem Haaretz U'Mloah. Everything in it belongs to God, including the terrestrial. Yet David says the terrestrial belongs to man. So he explains, the Gemara answers, Kan kodem brocha, kan achav brocha. Before we say the brocha, acknowledge who the master is, who God is, it's all God's. Once you've acknowledged who God is, God says, now you're welcome to partake of the terrestrial. That's the Gemara. The Sforno says, when you consecrate a korban, that's not Haaretz Nasan Levnei Odom. God never released that. Understand? God never released that to man. What you're permitted to slaughter is what's yours. What's not yours, you're not permitted to slaughter. That was never released to man. As a result of that, it compares it, and Sifron uses the same language. The pasuk says, if you slaughter a korban outside of its confines, it's like committing murder. It's taking the life of a person. It's an animal, but how could it be? How could you compare the two? The answer is, before the Mabul, it's the same thing. You weren't permitted to kill. It was like committing murder. That's where you have a right to take the life of an animal. Because that animal is not part of your domain. That was never released into your domain. So I'm saying, it's very good. The reason why you could slaughter a non-consecrated animal was it exists because that's attributed to Noach's choice. Not Noach tzadikoyim l'rosov. Motzachei b'nei Hashem. Okay? You have a right. But once it's brought to another level, which is consecration, which is kedusha, God says that I'm not releasing. So if you're not, how did you have a right to kill it? So it's like before the Mabul. Before the Mabul, it's equated to murder. But the human being is brio hikoris, with the primary. Acha brio hikoris bemes hi amin anushi. What is the primary creation? That is the humankind. The humankind is what? Is the Bria Ikoris. Choshara Nivroim, anything else that was created, Ben Hashvelim, Ben Agvoim Imenu, whether it's the lowly creations or the celestial bodies, the sun, the moon, the galaxies, Einam Ela Bavuro, it's only on behalf of the human being. La Shlomis Inyonov, that he should be able to complete, to bring about all his aspects of perfection. You know, Shmuel, from the Gemara, Rabbi Shmuel, he lived in Babylon. So he says, Shmuel says that a person who's able to read the stars, he does not read the stars, you're denying the existence of God. Because if you really could read the stars, you see the hand of God in creation. It's a printout on the future, the present, the future, if you're a true astrologer. So Shmuel says that the Shvili, the Rakia, the pathways of heaven were familiar to him like the Shvili, the Pumpadisa. Pumpadisa is one of the communities in Babylon. He knew the pathways of heaven the way he knew the pathways in Pumpadisa. So what is the value of the galaxies? to see God's hand in creation. That's its value. But knowing that, who's that to accommodate who? That's the medium for the person to achieve spiritual perfection within himself. Okay? Einam ela bavuro, la shlomas inyonov, to complete all aspects of what can be perfected within himself. All the various areas and multiple areas which can be developed within the human being, Moshe will explain. Everything needs a context. These various existences, those contexts facilitate or provide for human being the ability to perfect and totally flesh himself out in all areas of his potential. V'hinei haskola kol amidas tovos. He is coming upon understanding and other positive characteristics. Person develops his mind and comes to certain understandings due to his intellect. He was endowed with intellect. And he develops sterling character. Mahu afato, rachum, chanun, erech apayim, whatever it is, whatever God's characteristics are. That's what, that all attributes to shleimus. The person is doma lakono. You have a semblance of your master. You should walk in his ways. The material, the physicality of existence and corrupted character. That's the deficiency that exists within existence. Earthiness, corrupted behavior, cruelty, lacking in compassion. For Adam Hamusa Meneim, the human can go in either direction. Rambam and Hilchos Deos explains that a person born with a certain predilection of something or a certain inclination to be something, you're able to develop a second nature. If you behave long enough, even forcibly, in a positive, you'll become positive. You can develop a second nature. And a person could develop a second nature in the negative. So again, you're put in the position, you could be A, you could be B. Look at those posters. I once mentioned a beautiful word from Rabbi Shapiro, Chaim when he was raising money. It was 1929 in Chicago for Chacham Lublin, and he was a phenomenal orator, speaker, and he was a genius. And he knew he was able to speak to an audience and bring out certain understandings which were beyond impressive. See, he said, it has to do with this. He said that we find the words kruvim mentioned twice in the Torah. You find that the kruvim, the cherubs that were on the Oron, and you find the kruvim that after Adam was driven from the Gan Eden, it says Hashem put two kruvim, two cherubs at the entranceway that he should not be able to come back after he was driven out of Gan Eden, Garden of Eden. So Rashi says by the Oron, what's kruvim? Pneim kipnei tinokos. Their faces looked like the faces of babes, newborn children. And in regard to after being driven out of the Gan Eden, it says, Hua kruvim malachi chavolo, accosting angels, which is the antithesis of what the purity of an innocent newborn baby. So he says, it doesn't mean one, doesn't mean the other. So he explains that if you take that Jewish child and you put him on top of the Oron, you expose him to Torah, he's as pure could be. He has the innocence of a newborn child. You take that same child and you expose him to the sword, because what does it say? He was a cherev misapeches. He couldn't go back. There was a swinging sword. Adam and Chava could not go back into the Gan Eden. if he exposes that same child to the sword, he becomes a monster. The same child. It depends on the exposure. This creature we're talking about, he can go in either way. It depends what you feed. You feed the monster, he becomes a monster. You subdue the monster and you suppress it, then he becomes something special. Because every choice, naturally we gravitate towards the negative. So everything in life, what's choice? Choice is to subdue. It's to subdue the natural. To negate it. Because if you go there, that's what you become. And what about to be motivated sufficiently to do the mitzvah, the asay? Also not. There's inertia, you're being pulled back. Despite that, you go forward. That's something which goes beyond human. Because human always goes with the flow. You're attracted. This person is going in the contrary direction, which is the most positive. Stop here.